So these YouTube channels tend to have a focused theme or a niche, people sometimes say, so that you know what to expect every time you tune in. And mine have been all over the place. I've been on YouTube since it came out, basically. I think it was came out in 2005. I was on it maybe a year later in 2006. And I've talked about all things marketing and, education and technology and really specific nitty-gritty technology stuff, implementation and coding. And it's occurred to me that maybe I should focus or change, and I keep coming back to no, just be your genuine self, follow your heart, and let the theme reveal itself over time, and let it dawn on me and perhaps my audience at the same time really what it is that I'm about. And one of the thoughts that occurred to me is it is about the use of tools and the slow internalization of those tools, making them almost parts of your body, the way mitochondria once upon a time became an internalized power plant of the multicellular organism, one animal hosting another, so it doesn't need chlorophyll to convert sunlight to energy, but has other ways to break down the food you eat. That's because somewhere along the line, one animal ate another animal and gained that ability. Another example is how calcium started being used in our body for all things rigid and flexi-rigid. He passed over on the more abundant silicon. We could have used silicon. It's a similar element that can become a rigid substance. It's used in our information age, right? It enabled the digital age because silicon glass is what computers are made from. But it doesn't have this nice semi-rigid, flexible thing, which turned out to be good for bones and the shells of insects and such things. So over time, tools get internalized, and you can feel it happening with information tech. But it's not going to be burdened with proprietary licenses. It's going to be free and open source, the stuff that becomes part of who we are, the long-term, expanding DNA that wraps in external coding to our bodies, a lineage of information, both our biological information and the digital, meta or extended information is going to have the licenses that allow it. And that's easy with all the server stuff, right? Servers are already mostly Linux-based these days. There's some exceptions in business, but I'm sure over time that will change because they have the same, dislike for proprietary and especially expensive licenses as the free and open source community. It's just a matter of time and attrition. And that leaves the visual stuff, the desktop software, usually proprietary, usually what is most, dear to people. It's what they create the personal relationship with, their Microsoft Office, their Adobe Photoshop. So clearly my latest videos have been towards yielding to the reality of desktop software. It can't all be invisibly running server stuff. Even if it's Jupyter Notebook with its interface in a web browser, that's desktop software. You need a place for the browser to open, and it's visual, and you interact with it with a mouse. Even though there's a server in the picture running back there, you interact with the server through front-end user interface software, and that isn't changing or going away. So we can be pretty sure that some version of the web browser, even already today with Firefox, there will always be browsers in the free and open source. So the web user interface is a pretty safe, hook to hang your hat on when it comes to committing yourself to visual desktop software. And, not all the great visual desktop software is web software. GIMP, Inkscape, Blender, they use the APIs of the host operating system. And luckily, that stuff is written so it can just, rewire to generic windowing APIs. It doesn't have to be Windows. It doesn't have to be Mac. But Blender will run pretty well on pretty much any, popular modern desktop operating system. So go with those types of software. Go with the GIMPs and the Blenders and the Inkscapes. And that's my plan, but a little more than that, what I can bring to the folks on the channel is the process of escaping the expensive, the proprietary, the stuff that I always get kind of an ick feeling with certain tools, right? Because, am I a craftsperson in it for the finished product? Or am I more of a technician who loves the work? The journey is the reward. And over, I come back to the fact that I love doing the work. It's more about the work than it is the finished product. Sure, finished product sometimes, but in life, you're not taking those finished products with you, but you're taking potentially the experience of having done it, the experience, the part that is internalized as a portion of your body. That is what is with you always, not the physical finished product. So that is where a lot of my attention is being spent, to make sure that you're doing things with tools and in ways where you can feel the love. If you don't feel the love, if you're dissatisfied with your tools and the process of using them and get upset during the often expensive and often disruptive upgrade cycles where features are changed for the sake of change, to make sure that you will continue to pay your annual graphics art guild dues to Adobe because it's got background removal or some next such and such feature that all the cool kids and your peers and your competitors are going to be using this year. So you don't want to be left out. So you yield and you pay your $500 for the Adobe Creative Suite annual license. And even on smaller levels, I'm giving up my video editing and screen capture software, Camtasia Studio. It's really just TechSmith Camtasia these days, but I go back so far where it was, Camtasia Studio, probably to Windows 3.1 when I first started doing graphic stuff on Windows after giving up my beloved Amiga. Camtasia was one of the first pieces of software I've taken up, but they really turn the screws on you to make sure they get that $50 to $100 a year out of you. Same with VMware. And I'm just sick of it. I'm tired of it. You don't have to pay an annual dues to use software that's been around for so many years that it now is in the free and open source. So video editing, OBS, the open broadcast software, the same thing as I do for live stream, happens to be a great screen capture software. Far better than Camtasia, in fact, because it lets you do those soft edge alpha transparencies I've been doing around my head recently. And for editing, well, editing is an open question, but I am looking at the editing built into Blender, because Blender is never a bad bet. Blender does so many things well, an alternative to 3D Studio Max and Maya, but it's also an alternative to Adobe Premiere. Way fewer features, but so what? It's free and open source. It'll improve over time. So there you have it. I'm going to adjust my theme and I'm going to allow the fact that I'm teaching people to use virtual desktops to run visual software and server software on just any generic desktop, be it Windows, Mac, or I guess I should say GNOME or KDE, right? That covers the four biggies: Windows, Mac, GNOME, and KDE. They all offer very similar virtual desktops, similar ways of switching left and right between them, running software full screen, having Unix or Linux-like server stuff running in the background that makes it easy to deploy to the cloud or a home NAS or whatever have you. So there you have it. I love my latest sequence of videos, and I'm going to continue doing them, and I shall put increased focus thematic focus, define and develop my niche as, vendor independence, mastery of tools that are going to be around forever, be them visual desktop tools or server type tools with a general emphasis on Linux, Python, Vim, and Git. None of that's changing. But you'll always sprinkle in the web stuff because what? The web browser going away? Nope. JavaScript and Node going away? Not anytime soon. But the general, puppet master, the driver, the executive commander of the whole picture is rarely going to be JavaScript. Most often going to be Python, sometimes Bash scripts, and almost always running as Linux daemons, Linux services. So a lot more focus on that, especially the going from Jupyter, the Jupyter desktop oriented products to 24/7 automation, so you can get out of having to sit there and hit the button over and over like they do in Lost. But you can automate it? Yes! Even you data scientists and non-technical people can become a little more technical, because all that stuff you do that you say is non-technical, like Excel macros and stuff, is really actually quite technical. You just have to change the way you think about it a little bit to get good at the bits that make it timeless skills, command line interface based timeless skills. And there you have it. Thanks for joining me. Talk to you soon, and don't forget to follow my videos. I'll try and put them in some sort of better sequence so that they build upon each other for the great reveals that are in there. I've now got to chip away the stone and reveal the sculpture within.